Walker Kessler came out of high school as a 5-star recruit in 2019 and committed to North Carolina. At the time, Kessler was the 5th-ranked center prospect in the country and was looking to make an impact for North Carolina. Instead, Kessler struggled to regularly crack the rotation, starting 0 games as a freshman and averaging just under 9 minutes per game. Kessler then entered the transfer portal and chose to move closer to his hometown in Georgia and join the Auburn Tigers. Kessler found a consistent role at Auburn and started every game for a Tigers team that would eventually lose in the second round of the NCAA tournament to the Miami Hurricanes. Kessler showed off his defensive ability swatting shots throughout the year and got a chance to flash his mobility and space rolling to the basket. After a very nice sophomore season, Kessler is now looking at being drafted just outside of the lottery and should be in the NBA next season barring a surprise return to college. Kessler's biggest strength is as a shot blocker. Kessler is naturally going to be a solid shot blocker just because he is a large human being. Kessler is 7'1", 245 pounds with a 7'5" wingspan. Kessler could basically just hang out near the basket with his hands up and pick up a few blocks. But Kessler isn't just a good shot blocker because he's big, he also has incredibly good instincts and timing when it comes to blocking shots. Adding on to that, he's pretty mobile as a big guy. He can use his mobility and length to pick up chase down blocks. He also does a good job at handling guys driving right at him and timing up his blocks as well. All in all, Kessler is just incredibly talented at blocking shots. During his sophomore season, he tallied 10+ blocks in 2 separate games. While he likely won't be able to replicate this level of production in the NBA, he shouldn't have any issues continuing to block a number of shots at the next level. Another strength for Kessler is mobility at his size. I touched on this a bit earlier with how he is able to use his mobility to pick up chase down blocks, but his mobility also translates well to other parts of his game. Kessler isn't going to lock up guys on the perimeter defensively, but he can move his feet very well at his size and at least stay in place on the perimeter. Kessler regularly was able to hang with perimeter players and block jump shots in college, or stay close enough on drives to bother shots around the basket. This will help Kessler stay on the floor defensively. Teams won't be able to just throw him into a switch and play him off the floor. His mobility is also helpful on the offensive end. He can come up and set a screen on the perimeter and then dive quickly to the basket with his hands up. He also moves well in open space with the ball. He isn't a superstar at handling the ball, but he can pick up the ball in transition and take it to the basket or take a few dribbles in the half court. At his size, the ability to move the way he does can give defenses some trouble. The biggest guys in the NBA that will be able to handle his size aren't generally very quick, so he could present some matchup issues as he matures as an offensive player. The first weakness for Kessler is as a shooter. Kessler does have some decent touch on his shots around the basket, but once he gets out into the mid-range and beyond, it becomes quite the adventure. Kessler shoots off his shoulder and also doesn't have a super consistent release point. In 2 years of college, Kessler shot just over 20% from 3 and just under 58% from the free throw line. One good thing is Kessler isn't afraid to shoot the ball, so defenders at least have to somewhat respect him when he's out on the perimeter. But overall, defenses are going to be okay if Kessler takes a shot outside of the paint. It's entirely possible Kessler becomes a competent shooter over time in the NBA, but it's going to be a long process and likely require a complete overhaul of his shot. Long story short, Kessler will not be considered a stretch 5 in any capacity to start his career. Another weakness for Kessler is he can struggle with fouls. Kessler picked up at least 4 fouls in 11 of the 34 games he played this season, including one game where he fouled out in just 12 minutes. Part of the issue is Kessler just believes he can block any shot around the basket. This isn't necessarily a bad mentality to have, but it will lead to fouls if offensive players can keep the ball away from him when they put it up. There are times when it would be better just to stay vertical rather than trying to swat the ball. He also can get a little handsy with guys when they try to drive on him. Sometimes big guys will also just get penalized basically for being big, but there's nothing Kessler can really do about that. What he'll want to work on in the NBA is just not reaching for the ball so much so he doesn't pick up cheap fouls and struggle to stay on the floor. This first clip shows off Kessler's skill as a shot blocker. The play starts with the offensive player bringing it over half court and driving to the basket, trying to catch the defense scrambling. Kessler is around the free throw line backpedaling as the drive starts. Kessler opens his hips and jumps vertically towards the basket. He easily blocks the shot and helps trigger a fast break the other way. Kessler's instincts and timing when it comes to blocking shots are well displayed here, and he should continue to block a ton of shots in the NBA. This next clip displays Kessler's mobility. The play starts with Kessler defending out on the wing. The Alabama player drives to his right, and Kessler slides his feet well to cut off the drive. The offensive player then picks up his dribble and tries to spin into a fadeaway jump shot. Kessler easily handles the pivots and then swats away the jump shot. The ability to move his feet at 7'1" gives Kessler some incredible upside as a defender in the NBA. This final clip gives us a good look at Kessler's struggles as a shooter. At the start of the play, Kessler picks and pops out on the wing. Kessler then lines up the shot and misses off the front iron. This clip really provides a good look at Kessler's form. He almost puts it behind his shoulder and then slingshots it toward the basket. This is a very unorthodox shot to start with, but he also isn't very consistent with his release point on his shot. If Kessler wants to be considered a shooter in any capacity, he'll likely need a big overhaul of his form at the NBA level. Walker Kessler will likely be the tallest player, at least in terms of listed height, drafted this season. His measurables alone make him one of the more unique prospects in the 2022 NBA draft class. What is most intriguing is how he will continue to develop his game at his size. He moves well for his size and could come into the NBA as a really good defensive center. The question is how he will develop his game offensively. He scores most of his points as a roller in the pick and roll. He isn't really a guy that creates his own shot too often. He could still be a solid NBA player just being a defensive stopper and rolling to the basket with his hands up, but to really reach the next level as a player, he will have to develop his game more offensively. I'm not sure how likely this is, but with Kessler's ability on the defensive end of the floor, I think he has a good floor as at least an NBA role player. My NBA comp for Walker Kessler is Rudy Gobert. Gobert has better touch on his shot from the free throw line, but both are guys that block a ton of shots and play solid perimeter defense for their size. Unless Walker really takes off offensively, I think a Rudy Gobert type career is his best case scenario as a player.